We all get along in spite of where we come from politically speaking. And to me, that is America as well. It's a country of people who are very generous, gregarious, they're very loud, but they're also very warm-hearted. And that's what I love being here as well. You don't have to guess how they feel. They'll tell you. When I'm in the United States, I don't feel like an American. I feel more like a Dutch American. But when I go to the Netherlands, I feel like an American Dutchman. Get it?
Yeah, you're kind of in between the two cultures. How do you compare the two countries if you're talking about quality of life?
I would never want to be not well off in the United States. You see so many people who live in poverty. They had heart failure or cancer or some other medical emergency that bankrupted them.
What are some of the biggest differences between Dutch people and American people?
The American people should do something else right now because I don't want to offend them.
The way that I normally like to start this, Paul, is kind of getting a bit of an origin story. Like, where are you from originally? Where did you grow up?
I am originally from the Netherlands, from the north of the Netherlands, a special province called Friesland. It has its own culture, its own language. It's not just a dialect or an accent, it's Frisian. And many people who are not familiar with Friesland probably are familiar with the Frisian horses. There's huge stallions, there's dark horses that are very famous. And we have special sports in the north of the Netherlands as well. One is pole vaulting, but over a canal, which is fun. Instead of jumping over a bar, we jump over a canal and we race old barges. And there's a couple of things that I love about Friesland. And that is the place where I was born, in a town called Sneek. It doesn't mean snake as an English snake. It's Sneek. But it's the town that I called home for only a few weeks because my dad was a minister, and as you know, they move around ministers all the time. So after I was born, my dad was assigned a parish. We stayed there for 4 years. Then we moved to the west of the country, to a town called Zandpoort, which is very close to Haarlem, which is very close to Amsterdam. Of course, everything in the Netherlands is very close to each other. I jokingly tell people, if you are in the center of the country and you move 2 hours either way, you're out of the country already. It's that small. So we moved from the north to the west and from the west back to the north again because my father got different assignments. So I've moved to different places, lived in many different places in the Netherlands. And yeah, that's where I'm from.
And what about international experiences? I mean, the Netherlands is pretty centrally located in Europe. It seems like it would lend itself well to going to other places. Did you guys do that?
Absolutely. The Dutch are usually very well traveled because our country is so small. It doesn't take long to be there and see it all. So we like to move around, especially in Europe. And it's so easy, of course. In 2 hours, you're in Belgium, you're in Germany, you're in Austria, you're in Italy. And since the Dutch tend to have a lot of summer vacation, up to 6 weeks sometimes, which is unheard of here in the United States, by the way. We have at least 6 to 8 weeks of summer vacation. We have the time to go places. So my parents took full advantage of that. So from a very early age on, we went to Romania, out of all places, when Ceausescu was still in charge, the old dictator of Romania. We spent a couple of weeks there. We went to Italy, we went to Germany, we went to Belgium, we went to France. And later on, I traveled a lot as a student. I've been to Portugal, I've been to Greece, I've been to the UK, I've worked in the UK, I've been to Israel, I've been to the United States, of course. So I consider myself more of a citizen of the world than anything else. I mean, I'm attached to the Netherlands, but wherever I find home, that's where I am. You know, they say, wherever you are, what's that saying? But up, that's where you are. It will come to me at some point, but wherever you are, that's where I make myself a home.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's one old expression I think is like home is where you hang your hat or something like that.
Yeah.
Or yeah, home is where the heart is.
I have many hats in many different places. Exactly. Yeah. Home is where the heart is. Absolutely. Because, as much as I love being in the Netherlands, it gets a little small after a while, especially when you compare it to living in the United States. And with being in a small country comes a certain mindset. I won't call it narrow-minded because I suspect a lot of Dutch people will watch this because the Dutch tend to be very open-minded. But it gives you a small perspective. You start to think that this very small speck with only 18 million people, 18 million people, is kind of the most important part in the world, and that the Dutch have a very important say in world affairs. They always have things to say, and especially because most people are very proficient speaking English. They also think that they are very important, that their opinion is very important. They're very opinionated. And one thing the Dutch are famous for is the raised finger. Let me tell you what I think. And, you say, oh, guys, well, who are you? You're such a small country. You're very insignificant. And the irony is, by the way, that my social media output is all about the impact the Dutch have made on the world. So I try to raise the awareness about the Netherlands, because for a very small country, we have left our mark, and we are leaving our mark on this world in every single aspect of our civilization.
I mean, as a Canadian, I mean, our country is very big geographically, but we have a very small population as well, a little bit bigger than the Netherlands, but still very small. And I find that internationally, Canada, I mean, people know Canada, but they don't know much. Yeah, there's a lot of comparisons with the US. There's a lot of talk about the cold weather. There's kind of these stereotypes that people like to talk about. And other than that, yeah, maybe they can name a city or two. For someone like yourself who's traveled a lot, what's like the international perspective of the Netherlands?
Well, I think the Netherlands is seen as a very liberal country, especially when it comes to sexual awareness, sexual morals. Everyone who wants to go to Amsterdam always talks about, I want to go to the red light district because it's so amoral what the Dutch do. They're so open about sex, but I want to see it all. It's sex, drugs, and rock and roll, especially the drugs as well.
Uh-huh.
And so we have gained quite a reputation, but I'd say from my experience, most of the people who are into drugs are not from the Netherlands themselves, because it's nothing special. Because a small quantity of recreational drugs is completely allowed in the Netherlands. So as long as you're of age and you show ID, you can buy yourself some hashish. Not that I've ever done it. Everybody expects that I'm such a pothead or something. Well, you're from the Netherlands. You must have smoked a joint or two. I'm not interested in it at all. Most of the people who I see smoking a joint are not from the Netherlands, but that's the idea that we have. Also, people look at the Netherlands as very economically developed. We are very rich, and we are the second largest exporter of agricultural products in the world. So that's one way people know the made in Holland products. It's not just the stupid tulips and the dumb clogs and the windmills, which is basically our image that we spread. We're guilty of spreading that image into the world. That's what people think. But they think that we're a very liberated, modern society where public transportation runs like clockwork. We're very efficient. And lots of people are represented in parliament, because at this moment, I didn't check it, but correct me if I'm wrong, we have about 15 different parties in the Dutch parliament. So it means that you can find your own group, your own peeps, and form a political party and get a great chance of being elected. Which means that a lot of people see themselves represented in the political system, and we are known for what they call the polder model. A polder is the piece of land that the Dutch regained from the sea, because it's such a small country. We are growing so fast that we need more land. So we can't build up, because that's ugly. So we need to transform what used to be ocean, the North Sea and the lakes that we have, into land. And we call those lands polders. Now, in order to create land out of nothing, we need a lot of people. We need consensus. And polder politics is consensus politics. It's not a politics of confrontation of one party against the other, and you're right and I'm wrong, like we have here in the United States at the moment. We have all these parties that have to get along, and we have to compromise, otherwise nothing gets done. So the Dutch are masters of political compromise, not only in politics, but also in religion and in the rest of society as well, because we live so close to one another. We have to get along in order to survive. And that's one of the big traits that I admire in the Dutch. But I never knew I had that in myself until I went outside of the Netherlands and found out how special that really is. Because I think that's one of the experiences of the expats that people have. You look at your own country in a very different way when you're no longer there. You see what makes it special. Another thing, I mean, as you can tell, I like to talk. Another thing that makes the Netherlands special is our monarchy. We are the kingdom of the Netherlands. We have a king, a queen, kind of very cute princesses and lots of princes and And this system works. We are a constitutional monarchy where the king is officially the head of state. He has no official say in politics. He's more of a ceremonial figurehead. But I think it's rather special that we, the Dutch and the Canadians, have this relationship with something old and feudal, which dates back to the Middle Ages when we still had kings and queens. And I'm kind of egalitarian, so I think that nobody is above anybody else. But if I could choose between a president that you have to pick every 4 or 6 or 10 years, or a king that is a stable factor within society that guts on television to console the nation in times of national disasters, or to cheer on the Dutch soccer team when they do well, and we have a very down-to-earth monarchy compared to the British. The British are kind of stiff upper lip, aloof, very posh people. And the Dutch are just regular people, very down to earth. You can have a good conversation. You can invite them over for coffee or tea, whatever. And they're just normal people. We can relate to them. And that's another thing. The Dutch are known as kind of no-nonsense people. A famous Dutch saying is, doe maar gewoon, dan doe je al gek genoeg, act normal, and you're crazy the way you are already. So, doe maar normaal, act normal. That's what the Dutch say, down to earth, and of course, Calvinistic, if you have to talk about religion. I don't know if we have to talk about religion, but it's an important factor in Dutch society as well. Calvin was in conjunction with Martin Luther, one of the people of the Reformation. He brought Protestantism to the lowlands. And his big thing was that we get into the kingdom of heaven by doing good deeds. It's all down to our behavior here on earth. Time is precious, time is limited. So we have to, it's not by the good graces and forgiveness of God, like the Roman Catholics seem to think, that we get absolution for our sins. No, we have to be a good human being, good person, have strong morals and strong work ethic. And it means being on time. If you say, I'm going to be there at 10 o'clock, they expect you 2 to 10 at least, or 5 to 10. If you're too late, that's a sign of disrespect. And that's something that's strong from this Calvinistic aspect of Dutch society.
Very interesting. Yeah. I mean, the Dutch are known for being organized, punctual. I would say those are probably international stereotypes that most people hold about the Netherlands and Dutch people. Another stereotype is that Dutch people speak English incredibly well. Would you say that that is accurate?
In general, it's accurate, and I'm going to speak to you now with a very Dutch accent. Of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit, so you be the judge if this is very acceptable English. This is how I grew up speaking English, and sometimes the Dutch accent gets so thick they can't even see the TH. So they say the Dutch accent is very thick, so people cannot understand the Dutch person correctly. But on average, I think the Dutch are very proud of the way they speak English. They like to show off. So I've heard several people, like my wife, she's learning Dutch. So she wants to come to the Netherlands to speak Dutch. So she tries to speak Dutch, and the Dutch person hears the first hint of a slight English accent, and they immediately resort to speaking English with her. She said, please don't speak English to me. I want to practice my Dutch. But the Dutch like to show off. And I think that when they have polls worldwide, the Dutch are always in the top 10, at least number 1 or number 2, and then you have the Scandinavian countries followed by Germany. So I'd say the Dutch are known for their Dutch skills, but they have to, because again, we're a small country, so we have to be outwardly oriented. And I think the lingua franca, the most common language spoken in the world of trade, in which the Dutch are really good, is English. So the Dutch started the first stock exchange, and they started the very first multinational in the world. The first multinational was known as the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, the East India Company. They sailed all around the world, and they conquered all the lands they should never have conquered, and they brought all the spices and riches, the gold and the silver and everything, back to the Netherlands, and they had what we called the Golden Age. So we had to trade those things with the rest of the world, so we started the stock exchange. And when you go back to the times of Rembrandt and Vermeer, the famous Dutch painters, they all painted the rich guys of their time. When you look at the famous gables in Amsterdam, it's all rich folk spending their money that was not theirs because they all stole it basically from the colonies. Yeah, I know. But, that's the outward orientation of the Netherlands. You have to go outside of a very small country to make something out of ourselves.
And you did go outside of the Netherlands as well. You live in the U.S. now, right? How did that come to be? How long have you been there, by the way?
This is my 25th year, believe it or not. And if you had asked me 25 years ago, Paul, I'm going to interview you in 25 years and you'll be living in Vermont. And by the way, I live in the most northern tip of Vermont, very close to the Canadian border. We're about 7 kilometers or about 5 miles from the Canadian border in a town called Newport. I would have laughed in your face and said, forget it. America, the United States, that's not my thing. Those are not my people. How dare you suggest even that I would be living in the United States? But let's get to the sad part of the interview, because this all started with infidelity, believe it or not. My partner of 12 and a half years was not loyal to me, and I found out in a horrific way. And basically, I never wanted to see her again. I wanted to escape. I wanted to escape from my life in the Netherlands and start over. But what are you to do? You can't just hang up your hat and hang up the hat somewhere else, pack your bags. And where would I go? Where do you go? Well, you got to make a living. So I went where an employment was offered to me, and that happened to be in the United States. At that time, I have a long career in journalism. I used to be a radio journalist and television journalist on Dutch national and international TV and radio. But after that, I was fed up with reporting the news all the time, because the news is bloody and gruesome and people never change. They're bastards and they kill each other. And it gets very depressing when you report the bad news all the time, right? So I made a move from journalism to becoming a personal trainer. I taught what they call NLP, neuro-linguistic psychology, which is kind of basically what they call the science, the art and science of excellence. You study people who are excellent at what they do, you model their behavior and find out how they think, how they behave, that sets them apart from the rest of the world, and you teach that to other people. Anyway, that was my job. And I did that job with my then partner. And so there was an institute in the United States that was interested in hiring me. And I packed all my bags. I remember everything. I made everything fit in 2 suitcases in 1 plastic bag. And at Christmas time, 1999, in the last century, yes, I'm that old, in the last century, I moved to Philadelphia with 2 suitcases in the plastic bag to start a new life. Teaching for an institute, teaching personal growth and development trainings based on what I had done in the Netherlands. And I did that for a number of years. And the person who invited me to join her company eventually became my life partner. So that's what brought me. It was work, and a willingness and a need to escape from the place that I no longer thought of as home, because I felt betrayed. I felt betrayed by my friends who were in on the whole betrayal. And I can talk about it as if it's an easy thing, but I stressed over the decision. And I really thought about it inside of my brain, because I did not know whether or not I was doing the right thing, because giving up the Netherlands is a big thing, because the Netherlands is a very nice country to live in. You're basically taken care of from the cradle to the grave, because the government still provides many social services. Like I said, education is mostly free. Healthcare is mostly free. You don't get shot by a gun by a freak who uses an AK-16 or whatever the latest brand of submachine gun is. We live a good life. The Netherlands has a very high standard of living. Public transportation is phenomenal. I had many great friends, and I had most of my family in there. So having to give all of that up for the unknown, for a person that I didn't know, but who was offering me a job in a country that I knew but never liked. Whoa, that was a big decision. And I of course, now looking back, connecting the dots backward, I think I made the right decision, but at the time I wasn't sure what was waiting for me. I wasn't sure whether I would like it, whether people would like me, whether they would understand me. And by the way, at that time I had a very posh British accent, because since the Netherlands is very close to the United Kingdom, most of the kids when I was young grew up having to learn English with the Queen's English accent. So I sounded like a very posh Brit, and that made a very strange impression on these bewildered Americans, because they always think that when you talk like that, you're automatically smarter than they are. You're like an arrogant prick, Who are you to talk to me like that? And this is, I didn't know this is how I was received. People thought I was very intelligent and very stiff upper lip, high brow, and very full of myself. And I did not know that, but later on that explained many ways that people responded to me.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it helped you get the job. They were like, hey, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. I can tell just from the accent.
Well, here's a funny thing. I had had a career in radio and TV before that, and I always missed that part. So I was now a trainer of personal growth and development, and I really missed being on radio and doing things with my voice. So at one point, I was in Philadelphia. I saw a big ad in the paper. People used to place ads in the paper still in those days. And it said, Mike Lemon Casting, we're looking for new talent, voiceover talent. Do you think what it has to succeed in the competitive voiceover industry? Do you have a very special voice or a unique accent? Sign up for a cattle call on the next Saturday. We'll be happy to listen to you and see if you can join our roster of talent. And I said, this is something I could do for fun because I could still do my radio stuff while I'm this trainer person on this as well. So I went to Philadelphia. There's a big cattle call. There were jugglers, there were dancers, there were people who were ventriloquists, and one lonely guy from the Netherlands who had a background in radio. So they asked me to read a script and say, can you do different accents? And I did that. I could do David Attenborough, for instance. David Attenborough, the big British naturalist. And I could do a fake American accent, which is horrible. I could do different British accents, but I also could do a European accent, which is kind of a neutral, they call this a neutral Northern European accent. So basically, when you heard me speak, you could not tell where I was from. People said, well, it sounds Northern European, but is he from the Netherlands? He could be from Germany. He could be from Belgium. Heck, he could even be from Denmark. So it's kind of this neutral accent. People loved it because, let's imagine that you're an American company and you need to conquer the European market. You don't want to have a strong, thick American accent, buy American goods. No. The Dutch don't like that. Most people in Europe are allergic to this American accent. And you don't want to sound like a very posh professor either, But what you want to do to promote products that are from the United States to a European audience, you want to have somebody who sounds like a European, who has an undistinguishable accent. And that became me. And ultimately, that became my new profession. So from being a trainer in personal growth and development, I became a voiceover actor. And I've done that for about, 25 years as well in the United States. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy, huh? Most of the stuff that I recorded was in English, by the way, with that European accent. And I did some stuff for Dutch companies as well. I was the Dutch voice for Harley Davidson in the Netherlands. So the Harley Davidson dealer, you get these new models every year. They got the DVDs, and you heard me explain about the ins and outs of the newest motorcycle, the latest technology. And because I can sound kind of distinguished and well educated, the pharmaceutical companies ate me up as well. I was many times cast as a doctor who was supposed to talk about the latest medication and how to administer it correctly to the patients, right dosages. So that's another thing that I did. I did house tours, believe it or not. I could do this pretend British accent, making the houses that I would share. Look at this vanity or this beautiful light fixture. And it sounded like they were listening to home and garden TV with this David Attenborough type of person, giving this nice ring of distinguished class and chic to the whole presentation. And that became my calling card. And I've been part of that voiceover community for about 25 years now.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, that's very cool. I mean, you do have that kind of golden radio voice. So moving to the States from the Netherlands, very far away from home, getting this new job, it's related to radio, but a different occupation, really. That's a lot of changes in a pretty short amount of time. Was that a difficult thing to get used to? Life in a new country, a new job, all of that?
Well, I embraced it wholeheartedly because I, from a very early age on, was used to changes because of my dad's job. We were never sure that we would stay anywhere longer than 4 years. So I've lived in 20 years, I've lived in 5 different places. And then since we got a lot of vacation in the summer, we always stayed in different countries 4 to 5 weeks with my family. And I also worked for the BBC in London. And we had an exchange program with my broadcasting company that I was working for at the time and the BBC. Some of the BBC journalists came to the Netherlands and a Dutch guy got to the BBC. So I spent a year in London living and working there. So to me, change is really what makes life interesting. Now, of course, as I'm getting older and not as interested in moving all the time. I'm really happy with where I am in Vermont because we have a beautiful place. And I'm not that interested in moving anymore. But for me, I was really, every year I'm excited that I could embrace a new challenge. Of course, I'm not going to say that it was all easy, in part because I missed the people that were dearest to me. I was away when my mother was going through challenges and I couldn't be there with her every single day of the week. And my sister, I had one sister, had to take over really. And the burden of helping my mom out, who was elderly and not very healthy, was solely on her. And I felt guilty about that. And later on, my father got cancer and Parkinson's, and the same thing happened. I could not be there for him. I was just in the distance. And at that time, now we can talk over Zoom and FaceTime. That is very common now. You can look at your phone and you open Instagram or whatever. You can communicate so easily. That wasn't the case like 20 years ago. People barely had smartphones. So that was the time when I really, really missed the people and felt guilty that I had left them alone and had left my sister alone to care for my elderly parents. And of course, I grew apart from the friends that I had, and many friends didn't understand my position because I didn't want to tell them about what happened to me and the whole infidelity chapter of my life. I said, that's for my ex-wife to tell you. If she wants to open up, I'm not gonna soil her history. If she wants to come clean to her friends, let her do that. So everybody thought I was this jerk that left my wife alone, and they cut the friendship off. So I felt alone. Let me tell you this. So it's not all going to be misery, but sometimes the very bad things are the seeds for the very great things in life. Sometimes bad things have to happen in order for good things to come out of it. So if you ever ask yourself, what happened to me now, what is happening to me now is the worst that could ever happen. You never know that within that moment, an opportunity starts to grow that will lead to something much better. I know it's like a cliche, but something bad, something good can come out of something very bad. So the very bad thing in my case was my second marriage, but the very good thing, the best thing that could happen to me was the birth of my daughter.
And there seems to be a pattern as well, right? You left the Netherlands out of a negative situation and ended up in a new country, which seems like it's positive. I mean, 25 years later, you're still in the U.S., so I assume that you like it there.
Yeah. They can't get rid of me, and no, they tried, but I still like it there. I even love it here, especially in my later years. We moved to Vermont a couple of years ago, which was a complete change because before that we were still in the Philadelphia suburbs, in the what they call the Lehigh Valley. It's a place that people know from Allentown. The famous song Billy Joel sings about Allentown, Bethlehem, Bethlehem Steel, and I lived in a town called Easton. And Easton is known as the home of the Crayola factory. You know the Crayolas, the Crayola, the kids get thing that's made in Easton, and it's in the Lehigh Valley. The Lehigh River comes together with the Delaware River, so it's a beautiful town. I was part of that community for many years, and I liked it there. But the big thing is that it became a hub for companies like FedEx and Amazon. And you know what that happens? All the beautiful countryside turns into warehouses, and all the warehouses are frequented by the big trucks. The big trucks have to find roads that they can drive on. So all the provincial roads that you used to love so much become big highways, bringing in all the pollution. So in the later years of me living in the Lehigh Valley, things were going down in terms of quality of life because of the way it was situated. So it was time for us to move. But yes, I'm overall still happy here. And now when I go back to the Netherlands, which I do every couple of years, I feel like I'm a tourist in my own country, really, honestly. And this is this strange thing. When I'm in the United States, I don't feel like an American. I feel more like a Dutch American. But when I go to the Netherlands, I feel like an American Dutchman. Get it?
Yeah, you're kind of in
So I
between the two
don't,
cultures.
kind of in between. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the Dutch can't really imagine what my life is over here, although they think they know, because the Dutch always think they know better than anyone else. Sorry, Dutch people, if you're listening. The Dutch are known as people who know things better and they like to share that with the rest of the world. But anyway, so the Dutch don't really know, can't relate to my life here because they have no clue what it's like, really, especially nowadays. And for me, when I talk to my American friends, I can show them pictures of the Netherlands and what it's like. I can explain it to them. And yet there's something that does not click because they cannot fathom what life is like when it's safe in school, when you don't have drills, active shooter drills, when you don't have to go bankrupt when you have a medical emergency, when education is almost free, when you don't leave school in debt. They can't fathom that that is a thing. Or that we have public transportation that anyone can go to. It's not as affordable as it used to be, but it's still affordable for most people in the Netherlands. Or that most people ride their bike to work, or as leisure activity here. To riding a bike is a toy, And they also can't imagine that there's no wilderness, that there's no raw nature in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a very manicured country. It's one big garden. There's no wild area in the Netherlands anymore. Everything is so man-made and controlled by civilization. Whereas when we are here, I find it hard to explain to some Dutch people that I'm surrounded by quietude, by nothingness, by nature. That when I open my window, I hear nothing. I hear birdsong. I hear maybe a fox or a coyote, or I see a snake, or there's a bear trying to eat some of the bird feeds, the seed that we leave out. They can't imagine that life. It's weird. But it makes me special over here as well. And it now makes me special in the Netherlands as well, because I really used and abused my status as a Dutch American to get a successful career as a voiceover, as an international man of voiceover, because there's nobody who speaks like me, who has this accent that you can do a British accent and you can sound like Sir Ian McKellen or whatever famous British actor you want to name. But there's no one who sounds like me, who talks like me. And ultimately, me being Dutch in the United States made it very easy for American companies to work with me, because they didn't have to pay a company in the Netherlands. No, you can send me a check in America and write it out to me. You're done. And they found somebody that they could not find anywhere else. There's only one Dutch person in the entire rest of the United States that does what I do, and he has a very completely different voice from me. So we're not even competitors. And that's a pretty good situation to be in, that you're kind of the only thing. Yeah. So I'm often don't have to compete. People were offering me nice and fun jobs to do. And I enjoy the freelance life as well, because I don't know, you're a creative content creator, right? So you can set your own hours. You can make your own money. You can come up with your own ideas and run your own business as you seem fit, right? And that's also a Dutch streak. I think the independence, very strong independent streak that the Dutch have. We're kind of very very stubborn as well. Especially people from the north of the Netherlands are known for their stubbornness. They know what's good for them, and they will pursue whatever they set their eyes on, and they will make it happen. We're efficient, we're hardworking, we work hard, we play hard, and we're different, and we're not afraid to speak our mind as well.
And how does and what makes what are some of the biggest differences between Dutch people and American people? Like, if we were to make that comparison between those two groups in terms of cultural norms, values, how people act, what are some things that you've noticed over the last 25 years?
The American people should do something else right now, because I don't want to offend them. But let me phrase this as follows. Whatever I'm going to say is going to be sounding like a cliche or a big generalization. And every generalization is a lie, including this one. But anyway, some of the cliches have a kernel of truth in them. Overall, I found the Americans to be so friendly, so welcoming, so warm and enthusiastic, that we think as Dutch people, the Dutch people are kind of level-minded. When you hear Dutch people speak like that, this is the level of enthusiasm. It will never get above 7 or 8. When the Dutch person speaks at 7 or 8, it sounds like this. Unless they go crazy and watch a soccer game, that's a different ballpark, or they have a few Heinekens to drink. But mostly the Dutch are very level-headed, level-minded. They will never say, "Oh my God, this is the best thing ever!" Whereas Americans, they go berserk. They go out of their mind to show you their enthusiasm for the smallest things. "Oh my God, that's so interesting!" You never walk in your wooden shoes. "Oh my God, it's so great!" So, to us, it's all exaggerated. Everything is fantastic. The superlatives are there, and we don't have that in the Netherlands. And that's just normal. They don't act out at all. No, this is their level of enthusiasm. They always turn the level up to 11, you know? And it's a cliche. It's a cliche of the loud American, because the Dutch, when you hear the Dutch people speak, it's like at a 5 or 6, maybe we talk like this. But when you hear Americans speak, you can hear them from 10 miles away. And this is something that's been confirmed in many, many countries. If Americans don't think that you understand what they say, they start even talking louder because they say louder. They get a message across even better. That's what they think. It's not like that. Oh my God, give me a break, people. And and also, they think that America is the greatest thing on earth, the greatest country on earth. I mean, indoctrinated from birth. You learn how to say the Pledge of Allegiance in school. You have to respect the flag. Everybody hangs their flag 24/7. It's crazy. It's America, America. It's the greatest country on earth. And they believe that everybody thinks that too. They think that America is the savior of the world, the policeman of the world. The dollar is, of course, the money that makes the world go around. And we got oil. We got the biggest defense industry. It's the American nationalism, the arrogance, and they're so boastful. Everything that we see and hear from the current administration, it's just, gosh, it's not warranted at all. Come on, people, do normal, act normal. Turn it down a couple of notches. That's fine. The whole world thinks that you're a big show. This whole showmanship, of course. And also the Dutch are known as very humble people. One of the things that you have to be modest. Modesty, there's the Calvinism again. Modesty is a Dutch virtue. You don't boast about your own accomplishments. The Americans say, I make this amount of money. I got this promotion last year. I'm sorry for the accent, but they really want to share with the world how great they are, how great they think the nation is, and how life has blessed them. Now, also the element of religion in the United States is very strong, especially the evangelicals. I think a majority of Americans are evangelicals. And they shout their religion from the rooftops, and they think that the rest of the world, especially now with this administration, should conform to their religion. They try to get the 10 Commandments in the schools. They want to have the Trump Bible in every school, not in every state, but especially the southern states, And religion is a very important aspect. If you want to get along in society and move up, you have to be part of a church. You have to say, I believe in God. He's my savior. Whereas the Dutch say, oh my gosh, no. The Dutch have moved away from the church. We are becoming more secular by the minute. We turn away from faith. We're much more rational. They're not much into our feelings. And so that's another aspect of America that I think I underestimated, the influence of religion and how normal it is to talk about your own accomplishments and about your religious beliefs. And for some reason, you want to impose that and share that with the rest of the world. Are those enough cliches, or do you want to hear more?
I mean, what's interesting to me, what's kind of standing out is that earlier in our conversation, you mentioned how Dutch people, because the Netherlands is a very small country, tend to be outward thinking, well-traveled, learning English, things like that. And in some ways, the US is very inward thinking. This is the sense, like you mentioned, a lot of Americans might believe that the U.S. is, the most important country. The president, whoever they might be, is the most powerful person. The American dollar is the most powerful currency, and all of these things. It almost seems like the opposite mentality. Has that been hard for you to get used to, or is that normal for you now after so many years?
I'm still trying to get used to it, because I was astonished by the fact that most Americans don't even own a passport. They've never been anywhere. But then again, the country is so vast, they don't have to go anywhere to see different places and meet different people. That's one of the things as well. The vastness of America is something that you cannot imagine. You probably can because you're from another very vast country. But if you come from a very super small postage stamp sized country like the Netherlands, everything is huge. Everything is bigger in America, but it really is. The personalities are bigger. The country is bigger. And it takes many days to go from one part to the other part. And as I said in the beginning, it takes 2 hours to leave the Netherlands and you're in a different country altogether where they speak a different language. Here, wherever you go, you can go to a 7-Eleven, there's always a Walmart, and everybody speaks English. And if they don't speak English, they'll make you speak English, So, yes, it is still hard to get used to, especially these days. I don't know how political you want to get, but I really, really I'm not happy with the way things are going, politically speaking. As a Dutch person, I'm a very liberal person. I think that even the Dutch are so liberal that even the Democratic Party, in when you look at it from a Dutch perspective, is still a very conservative party. So I would be more like left leaning and a green person, voting for the Green Party if that would make an impact here. I don't, but you know, yeah, it is hard to get used to. And the hardest is when you meet the nicest people who are the most conservative Christian people in the world. And you know that you disagree on almost everything and you still like those people and you
Hmm.
understand why the people are the way they are. I mean,
Yeah.
I live in Vermont now in a very rural community. They say Vermont is probably a red state were it not for Burlington. Burlington is the capital. Burlington is the modern part where the import comes from Boston, from New York and everything. It's where the liberals live. It's Bernie Sanders' country, basically. It's a liberal part of Vermont. But if it were not for Burlington, the whole state would be a red conservative state, I think. And this is the countryside where people hunt. They find it fun to hunt. And this is another crazy thing as a Dutchman. Weapons? I never touched a weapon. I never saw a weapon. There's not even a store that sells weapons that I know of. You have to get a permit in the Netherlands. It's very hard to get a permit because nobody needs a weapon here in the Netherlands. But here in Vermont, hunting is part of their lifestyle. Hunting is how they cut down the deer population. It has a function and a role in society. So I had to get used to the people here in Vermont using guns for their livelihood. To shoot deer, and they use everything from the deer, from the skin to the meat and everything. So it is not to go to the shooting range and try to kill as many people as you can. No, this is a part of the Vermont life. And I lived in this very rural part in Vermont. At the same time, I've learned to appreciate the way people talk about family. They talk with pride about the land that they live on, the nature that surrounds them. And many people here are like biological farmers, ecological farmers. They try to live in harmony with and that's a very Dutch principle as well. The Dutch are very eco-friendly, and so they speak with respect about the land, and we're here for each other. Our best friends here in Vermont are our neighbors. A couple down the road, he's a retired OBGYN, and she is a minister who still preaches every now and then. And then another couple living a couple of houses down from us, he's a contractor and she's a special needs teacher, and they became our best friends. It's phenomenal because you buy a house, you don't know who your neighbor's going to be. You know what building you buy, but you don't know who your neighbors are going to be. And so we were so lucky. They introduced us to many of their friends, and so they helped us integrate in our little community here. And now my wife is a teacher. She teaches flute and piano. She's her own piano student. And thanks to all the connections that we've made through the friendship that we've built, she has now a thriving music studio with people from all over the place. We can now drive around town after 3-4 years of being here and say, oh, there's a student, she lives there. Here's another student, he lives there. And most of her students, by the way, are grown-ups who have time and who have money to start learning piano again, and a couple of kids as well. But we have become part of the community now, and we feel the warmth and the care for people as well. And that also is part of America. That for instance, I know I talk too much, but there's another thing that we do when it gets fall. Fall is a beautiful season. Leaf peeping is a big thing here. And it's time for the harvest of the apples, and we make apple cider here. Of course, we make a lot of maple syrup and apple cider. So our neighbor has an apple cider press. So he invites the whole street. We all bring our apples, and we use the apple cider press together and make apple cider and enjoy that with adult beverage and stuff like that. We have a great afternoon together, and that's just perfect. We all get along in spite of where we come from, politically speaking. And to me, that is America as well. It's a country of people who are very generous, gregarious. They're very loud, but they're also very warm-hearted, and that's what I love being here as well. You don't have to guess how they feel; they'll tell you, and they will open their doors and their homes for you. If you have guests and you have no room in your home, oh, they send them over to me. Without question. And that's so nice. I really feel that our house has become a home because of the people we're surrounded with, because of those silly Americans who have adopted the Dutch people. And I celebrated my birthday a couple of weeks ago. And two of my friends came over and both wrote a birthday card with a birthday wish in Dutch. They took the trouble, those Americans that never learned any foreign language in their whole life, to look this up on Google Translate to wish me a happy birthday in Dutch. And it brings tears to my eyes, Jared. I never felt so happy and accepted in my life.
I mean, there are lots of different ways that we have a high quality of life, and in every country, right? There's different definitions and different things that are important to different people. You mentioned some of those in the Netherlands being, the free healthcare or almost free healthcare, education, safety, public transit. The U.S. lacks a lot of those things, right? But you're mentioning other things like networking and community building and the warmth of the people. How do you compare the two countries if you're talking about quality of life? Are they just different, or does one have a higher quality of life versus the other?
I can only speak for myself, but let me put this more in general terms. If you're well off in the United States, you're usually very well off. And we are comparatively well off. I'm by no means super rich, but we have a lovely home, 5 acres of nature around us, which is huge when you're coming from the Netherlands. I have a forest behind my home. I own a forest with rocks in them. It's crazy. So we are considered to be pretty well off here, and you can lead a nice life. My wife has doubled the number of students this year, so that means also she is doubling her income. So we're able to live very comfortably. At the same time, when you drive through Vermont, rural Vermont, you see so many people who live in poverty that go bankrupt because of they had heart failure or cancer or some other medical emergency that bankrupted them. People who cannot find a job because there's basically not much to do, because all Vermont has is mountains and a few meadows where you can do some agriculture. But there's not much to do. Not everybody can become a maple farmer. We don't have industry. There's only 500,000 people in Vermont. It's one of the least populated states in America. There's almost nothing to do. There's nothing to do for the youth here. We thrive on tourism, mostly Canadian tourism. Of course, the Canadians are staying away, rightly so. Tourism, there's 30% less tourism this year alone because of the political situation. So businesses are struggling, businesses are closing. So if you're not well off, it's a rotten country to be in, because it's all about you have to make your own life. You have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps because there's no social safety network. And they will say, well, you're to blame because you did that's wrong, you did that wrong. And had you done this, you would not have been in this situation. Poor people are blamed for being poor. And the rich people, even though they might have inherited their wealth, are praised as these great geniuses of business. It's so weird. So if you're not well off, it's a miserable life. And I would never want to be not well off in the United States. But if you're well off, compared to the Netherlands, we barely pay any taxes, really. The Netherlands, most people in the Dutch, we have a progressive tax system, pay at least 60% taxes. 60%. Here in America, I'm not crazy. You don't even get money for yourself to spend. Well, we get lots of it in return. We get great roads without any potholes, healthcare, education, you name it. We've got safety. People take care of you in the Netherlands. It's the government that will take care of you because you put all that money into the social security network. And here, I had the unfortunate time in my life here in the United States that I was out of a job because, after my second divorce, I had to find my own way being a single parent. And I was no longer that international trainer of neuro-linguistic programming, teaching personal growth and development trainings. No, I had to try something that I've never tried before. And I became a person working in an international call center because I spoke my languages. I speak French, I speak German, I speak a little bit of English and Dutch, of course. So I had to call, that's my job, I had to call international companies in Europe at the crack of dawn, starting at 3 a.m., because 3 a.m. is 9 a.m. in the Netherlands, and doing surveys about how much people like their computers. I worked for Dell, and on a scale of 10, how would you rate your satisfaction with this Dell, blah, blah, blah. I had to do it all day long in a call center. It was the most horrible job, and I was poor. I was dirt poor. And I really felt what it was like, and not to be able to afford the things that you want to afford for your child. And of course, at that time, I wasn't well known as a voice actor because it takes an eternity to become an overnight success. You know, you have to work your way up and become notorious and go from job to job to job. So in that time, I had a hard time. I had to work as a waiter as well on the side. I had to wait for tips. Whereas in the Netherlands, where I was working as a radio and television journalist, making 100K a year at least, if not double that, I had to go and work as a waiter at night after doing the call center from 3 a.m. in the morning till noon. And I had to do my shift as a waiter working for tips. Yeah. It's a sobering experience, I can tell you that. I would never want to do that again. I learned a lot from it, but it's not fun to be poor in the United States of America. I can tell you that. I don't envy the people who are at the bottom here.
And I guess I guess Americans, a lot of Americans would say that that is the American dream, that you could start at the bottom, you could be working in a call center, you could be a waiter, and then you could end up years down the road having a 5-acre property. I mean, that is the American dream, the rags to riches story. And I get that. I get it's the quote unquote land of opportunity. But like you said, a lot of people are not born into circumstances that are very conducive to them finding success in life, not due to any mistakes they've made, but just because of the amount of money that their family has, or they grew up in a poorer neighborhood, or whatever it might be. Sometimes people are just out of luck, and the system, it seems like they fall through the cracks of the American system.
Oh, yes. And there are big cracks, and the cracks are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, as we speak, as we're recording this podcast, we are dealing with tariffs, right, that make all the things that we import a lot more expensive. And so the cost of living is going up. We have more inflation, so people are getting less and less of the money that they can keep. So we're really going into an economic recession. And first of all, it touches the poor people. The rich people who all benefit from the big tax breaks that our president is giving them, they don't care. They don't have to think about that at all, because they just can buy another yacht because they just got a big tax break. So yeah, the great thing is that I'm not a very materialistic person. I did not grow up finding my success and happiness measuring that by the amount of stuff that I own. It's more in the immaterial things that I find my happiness. I'm the happiest when I open the door to my home and in the morning, and I sniff this first breath of fresh country air. I hear the birds sing, and I look around. I see nature around me. It's quiet still. I see the dew on the grass, the beautiful greenery that's surrounding me, because Vermont is the green state, the green mountain state, right? I see the mountains, and that's the best feeling ever. It's not the car that I own or the big home, or the fact that I've had a career and made something of myself. No, it's not that. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter because it allows you to afford lots of things, but it's the things that I appreciate most are something that you cannot put a price on. Again, it's a cliche, but to me, it's true. I have a kayak that I can put on the top of my car. I can drive to 10 different lakes in 10 minutes all around me, and just take my camera, do my wildlife photography, or I can volunteer at a nearby charity that is organizing summer programs for kids, and be there and be surrounded by the people that I love. And that is really the richness that I experience on a daily basis. Yeah. I get a little bit sentimental.
When you go back to the Netherlands, you said that you don't always feel super Dutch anymore in comparison to people that still live there. You have you're American Dutch now. What are the things that stand out the most in terms of that reverse culture shock?
Well, one of the strangest things was when I went to the United States, we changed currency. We used to have the Dutch guilder. I don't know if you remember that, the Dutch guilder. All of a sudden, it changed into euros. So when I came back after I moved from the United States, the money looked different, and the Dutch had very colorful guilders. They're bright red, bright blue, bright orange, and all of a sudden we had these boring euros. The nice thing is that you can spend that money wherever you go in Europe. It's very easy. You don't have to, because they said if you exchange a 100 guilder bill 10 times in 10 different countries, you're left with nothing because of all the exchange and the commission that people demand. You have to do that anymore. So that's easier. But and currency is also part of the national pride, I think. So I grew up with that. But the biggest thing is that I have to get used to the way people speak, because as you know, when I listen to my Canadian aunt and uncle who left the Netherlands after the Second World War, when they tried to speak Dutch, they speak Dutch that they were known to speak in 1945, 1946. So it's very old fashioned. And I'm the same way because I did not speak Dutch most of my time that I'm in the United States. I speak English. So people think that I use old fashioned words. And I don't often get it because the Dutch are adopting many American words into the Dutch language that I'm not familiar. I try to translate those words into Dutch, find like a great word for something that they use American word for now. So you don't have to say that. You just say the American word. That's fine. That's what we use now. That's something that I have to get used to. I have to get used to the small size of the country, which to me feels I'm always kind of claustrophobic. I have this feeling of being in a very small place, very small communities, where news travels fast, where rumors travel fast, and where people live in very small houses with very small front and backyards. And that now it would really, I would not want to go back. Some people say, considering the political situation, why don't you go back to the Netherlands? It's all these great things. If you say the Netherlands is so great, why are you still here? Go away. Get back to where you came from. I said, no, I could not do that. I couldn't get used to it. I could not use, because I think the smallness of the country comes with a certain narrow focus, a narrow mindedness. And whereas here in America, the land of the horizons, where you can see far and far away, still without anything that reminds you of some sense of culture in the way of your view, that creates an open-mindedness inside as well. Whereas in Dutch, it's so small. People are so, what we call bekrompen, narrow-minded. Of course, the Dutch will say, well, that's not true because we go around in the world, we travel everywhere. We're not that narrow-minded. And compared to the rest of Europe, the Dutch are not that narrow-minded. But I experience it here. I feel here more of a freedom because of the space around me. So that's a big thing, and I think that a lot of things in the Netherlands are very expensive because their level of the economic level, the economy is doing very well. People make a lot of money, so they can afford to spend a lot of money as well. And so when I go out for dinner in the Netherlands, going out for dinner or buying clothes here in the United States is relatively cheap. My gosh, I burned through my vacation budget so quickly that I have to be careful how I spend my money and whom I'm spending it on. So that's different. But also the Netherlands that I left 25 years ago was a very left-leaning society. Still, we had left-leaning government, the socialist government was in power. But now we've made a complete change, and the right-wing parties are in power now. Even the extreme right-wing parties are in power. The party with most seats in parliament is a right-wing party in the Netherlands. And that means it's a reflection of how the Dutch voters believe that society should be run. But the values are right now. It's more right-wing. The Netherlands used to be a tolerant society, an open-minded society. It used to welcome strangers from all countries. Everybody was welcome. Now, a lot of people in the Netherlands don't like the foreigners, just like here. We don't like the illegals. We don't like the people who don't integrate with our culture, who don't speak our language, and who are different from us. And that makes me so sad because I think one of the parts I loved about the Netherlands is that we're so welcoming and that we're so open to different cultures because we ourselves went into the world and made contact with different cultures and brought back different things from those cultures that made our country what it is today. And now people again are becoming more like focused on themselves and their own benefits. And just as what you see in American society, I think that there's a lack of empathy growing in the Netherlands, that we no longer have to take care of each other, but it's more about make sure that you take care of yourself first. And that makes me sad.
It kind of cuts against that community that you were talking about, how much you value the community that you're in. And community does come from caring for people around you, right? And anyone who might need help can get it from their community. But that the mentality of isolationism is destructive, I think, because like you said, it just breeds that idea of it's just me. Whatever problem is going on in the world, it doesn't affect me. I'm only focused on what's good for me today. And it's very limited thinking. And I don't think it even benefits us as the individuals at the end of the day, you know?
We need each other, absolutely. We absolutely need each other because we are so different, even though there's many things that we have in common. The great thing about the human race is that we're all so different. We all bring our own thing to the table, which enriches our life. You know, if we only would eat McDonald's all day, that would be a terrible diet, right? And so the Dutch cuisine has these many different restaurants from many different countries. You can eat Greek, you can eat Indonesian, Italian, anything you can eat. And it's like this patchwork of nations and cultures that is so fun to be around and to experience, because our own experience, no matter how great it is limited. Everything is a limitation. So I like opening up my own mind. That's why I like to travel. And that's why I like to learn different languages, to read books in the original language, to watch movies without subtitles. What a concept here, to read movies that are not dubbed, to read movies with, because that's another thing about America. The TV shows that we watch that are foreign shows, first of all, most people don't watch foreign shows on American TV because they don't like hearing foreign language and they don't like reading subtitles. So they miss out on that impact as well. So I watch a lot of foreign stuff on Netflix and Amazon Prime because I enjoy that. But those are shows that barely any American knows of and is watching because they have to read the subtitles. And that's not what we do here. Yeah, you know, I I have a great life here, and there's certain aspects that I don't like as much. But when I look back, then I'm very grateful, and that I think I've done well for myself, thanks to my wife, my third wife. Of course, I remarried because I didn't get to the part of the story. I lost my first wife to infidelity, my second wife through narcissism, and the third wife was a charm. And we've been married for over 20 years now. And she's the most amazing person in the world. She's American, by the way. She's learning Dutch as well, which is so nice. And she really changed my life and turned my life around for the better. And she's the reason why I'm really happy here as well. And well integrated Dutchman in American society.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that you're happy where you're at. And yeah, thank you so much for having this conversation with me, Paul. This is probably a great place for us to wrap up on a positive note.
I think that's a good idea. Thank you so much for your probing questions, and I apologize for not giving you the opportunity to ask more questions because, as you know, I'm a blabbermouth. You know, I'm a radio guy. And whenever there is a minute that you could not have silence in radio, that's the unwritten rule. There's no silence in radio because people think that their radio is broken. So I had to blabber on. So I apologize for that.
No.
But thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the Netherlands and the United States and a little bit about myself.
Yeah, my pleasure. This has been really fun for me. Before we wrap up, though, tell people how they can find your content online. You mostly make videos on Instagram, is that right?
Yes, Instagram is my big platform. I have a website that's nethervoice.com. Nethervoice as in the voice of the Netherlands is one word, all lowercase, nethervoice.com. That's my website. And you can find me on Instagram at the Nethervoice. It used to be nethervoice dot whatever, but then somebody hacked my account. So it's now the Nethervoice on Instagram. And you can also find me as a Dutch Paul Holland, one word, on TikTok, and as Paul Holland on TikTok as well. I have many accounts, as you know, as a social media creator. You can't afford to just have one account, but Paul Holland, because my last name is Strikwerda, which is not very common. It's not very catchy. People don't remember that, but Paul Holland, everybody knows. So if you look for Paul Holland, one word lowercase, on TikTok, you can find me as well. And I post two things there. I do this thing where I pronounce Dutch words and names the way a Dutchman would pronounce them. I tell about Dutch art, Dutch literature, Dutch invention, anything Dutch. I'll tell you about it. And the other time I do this, I do English words and phrases they never bothered to teach me in school for people who are learning English as a second language. So I discovered when I came to the United States that there were many expressions that were completely new to me. They never taught me that in any textbook. So I gathered all these expressions, and now I teach them to people who are learning English as a second language. And it's fun to do, as you yourself know. It's fun to create a community around those things.
Amazing. Okay, I'll put links to those in the description. People can check it out. And yeah, thanks again, Paul. I'll talk to you later. Thank you.